Hello friends, I'm just gonna give a few people a chance to join in. I'm sorry that I'm 2 minutes late. I was just having some connectivity problems on my end, and it usually comes up with these things. So let's wait for a few people to come in and join us. I will share the link on my profile. Hello, Andre. Thanks for joining in. Just waiting for a couple of people more to join. It would be appreciated if you could share this to maybe some of your friends that are interested in design thinking or business in general. Hi, Chris. Nice to see you join in. I'm just going to share this out to my friends so they can see it as well. I'm interested in this session. I'm interested in hearing from everyone their questions and suggestions so that we can introduce them into the whole process as we go along. So up front, I'm hoping to hear a lot of your comments that I can incorporate into the talk. Hi, Dean. Nice to see you too as well. I'm just going to share this and then we start. How are you doing, Dean? So I just lost my yeah, okay, so we're gonna start. So the first, I've written myself an agenda because without it I usually just kind of go off on a rant. Hi, Fraser. Nice to see you too as well. Please ask questions as we go along. I will incorporate the comments and questions. I'm doing great. Incorporate comments and questions as we go along and answer them based on the topics. I sort of wrote myself a little agenda so I don't go off the rails. So I'll start with the first topic in this stream, and just to give a background, the plan here is to do these live streams around design thinking and design thinking for business once a week for free inside this group. What we're planning to do is to organize a physical meetup. One is coming up on 23rd of November. More details to follow both in our meetup group and inside this Facebook group as well. So just quick introduction to what the hell is going on here, right? So UX Coach is the company which I'm building with a bunch of very interesting people as well who are in the team with me, and the mission that we have is to coach 1 billion people design thinking, and that's a huge mission, but I believe that we can accomplish it within next sort of bunch of decades with help of things like artificial intelligence and various kind of bots and scalable systems that we keep having more and more frequent access to at lower and lower costs, and with various kind of co-creative designed materials that will end up reflecting themselves in some form of online university for design thinking. So UX Coach, still a relatively new idea, being gotten off the ground. We're using design thinking methodologies to develop the whole proposition, value that we're giving to people, and this particular exercise that I'm doing here is part of that iterative process of finding out from you guys what you would like to hear more about, what your concerns are, what you don't get, so that maybe we can clarify, etc. So that's UX Coach mission, coach 1 billion people design thinking. That's the team that's setting this up. So the intention with the group here on Facebook group and the meetup group is twofold. So on the Facebook group, we're building more of a global community of design thinkers. It's early days for us. So we're sharing design thinking related articles and conversations so that we can all kind of get inspired and learn from it, pick up tips and insights about how to apply design thinking to business and other aspects of life, but mostly to business that we're focused on. So that's the intention of the Facebook group. With the MeetUp group, we're focusing more on London area to bring sort of physical people into a community and then organize physical meetups in London with presentations, formal presentations, panel discussions, guest speakers, all the kind of usual spiel. And maybe we'll also do some actual physical coaching sessions with workshops, etc., because design thinking lends itself nicely to that. So those are the kind of intentions of these groups and building the community so that we can all learn from each other and promote this and get design thinking more into the mainstream, closer to UX Coach's mission of coaching billion people design thinking. I get like a handful of people ask me, how far have you got in this mission of coaching billion people design thinking? And the answer is only like a handful so far, because we're looking at reaching out to corporate clients at the moment to deliver outreach corporate design thinking sessions to groups of 10, 20 people, and sort of start at this kind of corporate end of the scale, work our way into more sort of middle area, and then build this online university for mass market reach. That's the way in which we envisage building a sustainable company that can execute the online university. In parallel, we're doing a lot of work to prep up the sort of ecosystem for all of this, with talks with partnerships with universities, doing guest lectures, creating partnerships with groups like British Computer Society, for example, and finding ways in which we can collaborate, and also working with some of the commercial clients as well on some interesting collaborations in which I can't share the details at the moment, but it's a way of sort of fanning out the design thinking talks. What the intention also behind these talks as well online is to do them on regular basis, weekly, and I'd love to pick up from the group kind of the topics and themes that you would like to hear about. And also, I can talk about them myself, but also other members from the group can deliver these live chats and pick up a particular theme that they're experts in and deliver a little bit of a masterclass in, and their sort of own talk. So then the third theme really on my agenda was to discuss with you guys, and it's a shame that in Facebook here we still can't do sort of a number of ways, sort of video presentation here, but I'd love to hear from you what kind of topics you would like to hear about in the future. I've been asking this in the group as well. So this kind of first chance to kind of chip in your comments, your suggestions, your ideas, kind of what brings you to sort of what's your interest in design thinking, right? Why are you intrigued by this? What do you think about it? What are the topics that you'd like to know more about? I've heard all sorts of feedback so far in terms of people kind of liking the sound of design thinking as methodology or a framework of thinking, but they don't really know what it is, how it works, is it for them, how does it differ from other ways of thinking like business thinking and systems thinking. So these are kind of topics that we can discuss. So Dean is saying best practices, how it applies to putting a business case together, and future-proofing design work. Okay. Okay, these are interesting themes. One of the things that I've recognized about design thinking is that it's it seems to be a method of methods, right? So what I mean by that is design thinking is one unified method for holistically creating solutions to any type of challenge that we can come across. But that's quite generic statement. So there are then instances of design thinking Uber method. There are instance methods like product design, user experience design, user-centered design, architecture, right? Visual design, business design, and so these kind of things. So what's interesting then with design thinking as a Uber method, it's talking about the common ways in which all design instance methods deal with solving challenges. So phrases saying members may fall into three categories. One, interested but know little about design thinking, know the theory but have limited experience of applying it, and three is expert. Yeah, so this will also be an interesting challenge for us to deal with in terms of how to deliver design thinking at sort of beginner level, intermediate level, and advanced level, and also help people understand how to apply design thinking to less obvious areas. In some respects, business design is somewhat less obvious area, whereas like visual design is perhaps more obvious to some extent, although there are nuances there that like best practices, as Dean was saying. And what's interesting from best practices, for example, point of view, is that these best practices can be like universal truths, universal wisdoms that like apply to, you know, every instance design method. For example, maybe like one universal truth might be that a design needs to be comprehensible by a human being, right? If humans are being targeted. But what's interesting with design thinking as well is that you might be designing for animals, okay? So but comprehensibility is probably an aspect, you know, of good designs, right? So we'll look at some of these aspects of what makes good designs, irrespective of what you are instantiating it into, whether it's physical products, software products, businesses, etc. So Dean is saying, I learned a lot at my time at Apple about best practices for UI design, user interface design, and most of it was human nature interactions. Yeah, so design thinking compared to, let's say, business thinking or systems thinking recognizes the fact that humans have their own minds and have their own psychology, and that humans are driven heavily by emotions, and emotions are very hard to explain and hard to also manage for people, and even to understand what they're feeling. Right now you might be confused, right? But is that an emotion? You know, how are you even feeling? Can you even determine that with yourself? And then the question is, how is that emotion then driving you to make decisions going forward? What is known in psychology is that 95% of human decisions throughout the day are made subconsciously on some sort of emotional trigger, versus 5% that are made logically. So our logical mind does not really drive our decisions for most part. So we're, as designers, we're very heavily interested in human psychology to understand behaviors that humans exhibit as to make things usable, useful, and functional for them. based on some sort of problem that they experience and have to solve. So thanks for your comments. So Fraser's saying he's interested because he thinks he can apply it to some degree, focus on the customer, but need to know all about the methodology of design thinking. Okay, sure, great. So this is what we're going to go like one by one, step by step through all of this and cover these themes, and maybe then break them down into more subsequent sort of chunks and so on. So what we want to do as well then is to build a wider design thinking community, okay, both through our website at uxcoach.me and through, you know, corporates, startups, universities, these kind of professional associations like British Computer Society. We really want to be absolutely everywhere and have one unified place like on uxcoach.me, where all these kind of design thinkers can meet up and learn together and discuss design thinking, share some of their methods and methodologies, and then also, you know, get together to design things that are good for the future of our planet and humanity. So, you know, if you are aware of people in your network, you know, they're interested in design thinking and you know, designing businesses that are sustainable. That's kind of our core focus nowadays. Creating sustainable businesses that work, that grow. You know, bring them into the group. You know, if they're interested, maybe they can also become co-admins as well, and so on. Also sign up on uxcoach.me if you haven't done so far, because that way we'll be building more more and more into a functional online university, as I was saying. So if you sign up now, then your sign up will continue into more functional aspects. So Dean is actually, just for the people who don't know, Dean has actually worked with Tesla, worked for Tesla, the electrical car company, and so he's saying he's going to bring Elon Musk in. So thanks, Dean. You know, that's exactly what the kind of caliber of people we need, and so. So in terms of overview of design thinking as applied to business, I'm just going to give a top level theme here, and then we can go into breakdowns of section by section. At UX Coach, we developed this diagram which I've been using now with a bunch of people, and so far it's worked really well, and I think it's kind of potentially going to become a diagram which sets out a bit of a standard view on businesses and how we should think about businesses. But it's a hexagon which puts people at top. So it's people make. In fact, I could actually show it here. I'm just going to flip my camera and show you on my laptop, so that, you know, we're using the visual areas. So it's going to be a little bit jerky, but you will. This is the diagram which we are working with. So these are business areas which design thinking can impact on. So the people come on top. People are both employees and the customers, users of the systems or products. Okay, there's a difference between user and a customer. User is someone who uses the system. So for example, you're using Facebook at the moment, you're not paying. The customer is someone who is paying for usage, and also employees who work at the company are also customers. So people come at top because people ultimately build companies. An interesting word, company, is like being in a good company. So, you know, bunch of people form good company. Bunch of good people form a good company. The next one is systems. So we can design, with design thinking, we can design cultures, company cultures. We can design, understand, and research customers, um, who they are, what their needs are, what their pain points are, etc. We can plot out customer journeys and life cycles and so on. So these are kind of aspects of people area of business that we can tackle with design and define and illustrate. On the system side, it covers the operations and processes. We've used these words specifically to kind of avoid all these big kind of typical business words like operations and processes. But systems are any IT systems or processes or procedures that need to be followed in order to run the company. And we avoid the word business as much as possible, call it company because of this social aspect to the word company. Then there is innovation side of things. In business terms, you might call these unique selling points. Again, we avoid the word sell because it implies some sort of dirty trickery. But innovation is coming up with new ideas, something that hasn't been done before, and creating things that are new and more attractive to people to use, the customers and users. So with design thinking, we can look at ways in which we can create better and more interesting innovation. Then that results in products or services. Usually it's interesting that service-based companies, like for example health insurance companies that offer things like health insurance. Health insurance isn't a fungible, touchable, physical object, right? It's a service. If you get ill, you claim your health insurance and they pay for you. So there's nothing really physical that you interact with. Okay, you interact with hospitals, but it's overall the process is the service. But they call these products internally. So what's our product? And it's like comprehensive cover. That's one of the products. Comprehensive cover means a service that you get, comprehensive service that you get. So products are certainly designed. So in Tesla terms, it's the electric car, but then there's also the charging stations. Then there is adjoining companies that they've created to create the entire ecosystem of effectively what will become self-driving, electric, self-powered, renewable energy grid for transportation. Okay, so I don't see Tesla as a car company. I see Tesla as a self-governing transport grid company. So money side of things, again, to avoid the word finance, which is a bit dirty and people don't like the sound of it. Basically money. Nowadays, even money is being disrupted by things like blockchain and different cryptocurrencies, and the whole financial sector is having to reinvent itself. But certainly things like business models within businesses, cash flows, all these things require designing and thinking through how often people will be likely to pay, for example, for the product that they're using. So, for example, with Tesla, you're not paying so much, certainly for charging of the car like you would with gas cars, but maybe there's slightly higher price up front that you take because the cost of running and maintenance is lower compared to gas cars. So these kind of money aspects need to be well thought through, again, because they trigger emotional responses in users and customers to a point where those users and customers will drop out of the process of interacting with the company because they don't see it as valuable. And then growth, the sixth area, is the result of all these inputs on the side of people, systems, innovation, and products. Money is also product of products. Yeah, it's like a little bit of a funny statement there, but products, when they're sold, they create money, and that money can be used both for growth, for sales and marketing and advertising and all these kind of things, storytelling, All these things can and are designed by big companies. So if you look at Apple's adverts or storytelling or their posters or their brand and all these kind of things, brand in my world, in our world, comes under growth, because the only reason why companies will ever brand themselves is to be able to grow. So that, like, when you think about Pepsi or Coke, Coca-Cola, you know, these brand names and symbology and so on is there to enable simple and easier growth of the company. But you can't really easily have growth without, you know, good design thinking people putting efforts into creating systems and innovating to create products that people are willing to pay money for, and so that it becomes a growing company. So, quick overview of design thinking for business and the areas that are relevant design thinking wise for business, and where we can impact on. Dean is saying Apple's latest advert about usability is amazing, by the way. Should all check it out. So, Dean, why don't you post it into the group after this live stream, and, you know, post your comments why you think, you know, that's good application of design thinking there. And so, to sort of generally just start wrapping up, this is an intro session, so I'm not really going to talk too much specifically about design thinking. This is more about the intention behind you know, this group and these meetups that we'll be organizing, both virtually and then leading up to physical meetups, so the, you know, community can cross-pollinate, and those people who are, you know, living outside of London, where we're currently based, they can hear us talk. But, you know, we want to meet physically as well, and exchange sort of design thinking workshops and exercises between each other, and learn and sort of leverage, create more content and share it, and influence the world to become more design thinking oriented. The last part of this particular live stream is just freeform Q&A and conversation part. Is there anything that people are feeling right now off the back of what I sort of spoke about? Any ideas on how we can grow the community? One of the things that you know, has been a little bit confusing for both me to explain and for other people to understand is, like, you know, it's like reasons for, like, why design thinking is you know, a relevant thing. It's like, why should I be thinking about design thinking, right? And why is this relevant? Why bother, right? There's lots of reasons for that, and effectively with design thinking, we're looking to reduce things that people don't want and improve things that people do want. That's the bottom line, you know, that's the bottom line. And design thinking is the best methodology for achieving that, right, in a sustainable, holistic way, so that it covers all those areas. Let me just see what Dean's asking. So, how long do you think it would take to grasp the general concept of design thinking, or would it be an ongoing learning path? Good question. So, I myself am always learning still, because, like I said, there's like the design thinking as the Uber method and best sort of practices, and some of the activities that we can exercise all the time. Like, for example, speaking to customers, speaking to users, how to do that, right? There's methods within that. Just in the research, there are methods on how to speak to customers and users to actually elicit the information that you're looking for, because you can't necessarily just willy-nilly go to people and speak to them. A lot of lean startup proponents will say you just walk up into the street and you give people something, and, you know, they tell you what they think about it. It's like, sure, but if you're building let's say a wheelchair, right, you give that wheelchair to a random human, they don't care about it, they don't have any sort of disability or something, they're not necessarily the target audience for you to ask this. To someone else who's already in a wheelchair, you give them a prototype of another wheelchair, they'll be able to tell you much more about their pain points about that versus just some random passerby. So actually in that kind of lean startup methodology, a lot of practices potentially that they deploy are kind of like, they seem like good practices, like talk to the users, but actually you first have to identify who the users potentially are. And if you're talking to someone who's more out of the box interested in a product or a service, those people will be more relevant for you to research with than those people who just don't really have any intention of ever being interested in that. And so even just researching things is tricky set of tasks and methodologies that we deploy, and then marrying up the research findings and so on is also tricky, in interpreting that and feeding that into the design process to know what needs to be worked on and what's more kind of disregardable and so on. So I think for like overall general design thinking concept, there's quite a lot to it, and it's not a quick thing to learn. Certainly in terms of embracing this kind of mentality of going like, okay, many things around us are designed. Someone's designed. What do I have here? These little pads that you put hot coffee on so you don't burn your table, right? So, but like, why is this one designed in this way, right? Why did they make it like this? Why? Okay, and there's a process behind manufacturing this. So one of the things that design is typically misunderstood for is that most people think about design as how things look. The visual aspect of things is kind of typically interpreted as design, but actually design is defined as the blueprint of how something should function before it's made. Okay, so it's a picture of functionality of a system or a product before it's made. But that's one definition of design. Design is also a process of how you manufacture this. So with Apple, you will hear a lot of the time they actually explain this even in their advertising, that for example the latest iPhone 7 goes through a very, very fine process of running it through grains of some sort of special material that makes it extra smooth in the end, so that it feels very special in the hand, and it's very fine finish and so on. So design is also a process. So it's like blueprint of how something should work before it's made. It's a process of how that is manufactured, and it's also the end output. So sometimes you'll see like someone describe Tesla as a car. They'll say, look at the design of that, right? Design in that case is being described as an output of this manufacture process, and that output product has got its sort of maintenance requirements for it. There's a whole aspect around how to upgrade it and change parts or replace and so on. And similar is the case with software, right? Software breaks as well. Updates need to be delivered to it. Upgrades need to be delivered to it as well. And some old functions that are not required, functionalities need to be sunsetted and new things brought in without users and customers being disrupted too much. So recommend any good design thinking sources to learn from apart from this group, web or books. There's quite a bit of material out there. Stanford School is recognized for design thinking. Design thinking as a concept, as a term, has been around for a number of decades now, but this is another topic we will cover on in terms of consciousness evolution of humans, where certain things, it's like like Nikola Tesla, for example, 100 years ago was talking about wireless electricity worldwide and giving us access to wireless power without need for cables and things like that, and people thought it was crazy. It was a total waste of time. Whereas nowadays, Intel Corporation, 100 years later, can give us wireless power, but it's only on 2 to 3 meters or 4 meter range. Fraser, you can look up design thinking on places like YouTube, and there are lectures from Harvard University and Stanford University, I think. And so they're actual university lectures, okay? The downside of university lectures is that they're a little bit... I feel like university lecturers have a tendency to deliver the same old theme and same old examples, over and over again, which is fine. To a lot of people this is innovative stuff, but a lot of people are looking for more specific examples, more nuanced examples from different industries. So with design thinking, we're always looking for more specific examples to say how health insurance company has changed itself from one way of doing business to another way of doing business, or a bank, how they're changing their ways of customer facing approach and so on. And this is another thing about design thinking where people are a little bit confused as to they expect it to be quite prescriptive. Okay, so it's like, tell me how I should design a website. Okay, and it's like, sure, I can tell you that, but then you realize that with your resources that you have available, both your knowledge and people and content that you have available, you start realizing, oh, what I prescribe to you does not necessarily work for you, because you're in a particular circumstance, because you either just started or you got tons and tons of content you want to put up, you want to phase that content up there, you want to distribute it across different channels. Suddenly the problem becomes much different than to build me a website. Okay, so design thinking isn't like a prescriptive method where I go do this and this and this and this and your problem is solved. No, that was like management consulting. Okay, management consulting did that, and it wasted billions of pounds and dollars worldwide across single projects, let alone multiple industries. And this is coincidentally why a lot of management consultancies are looking at changing themselves into design thinking consultancies, because with design thinking gives you a skill set, a set of methods and approaches to use to actually work out, okay, we are in this company, the way we're going to build a website is like this and this and this and this, and this is how we're going to maintain it, and this is how we're going to update it, and this is how we're going to change it and tear it down and put it back up and so on. And as if you've worked across different companies, you'll see that each individual team has their own ways of communicating and processes and so on, but as long as it feeds into other teams in meaningful ways and value-adding ways, that's fine. It doesn't have to be some sort of hierarchical organizational chart and infrastructure that's followed specifically because that's how you shall communicate. No, it's not a prescriptive method. It's a set of tools, mental tools and models and approaches to solve any challenge in a way that's actually going to be liked by the end customer or user. And this is where we actually have to use our cognitive faculties to go, hold on, I have a better idea. Let's not organize these things in this way. Let's organize them in this way to actually create better results, more optimized flow, etc. So we have to trust our minds and our abilities to think creatively and produce things that are better, incrementally better as we go along, as opposed to waiting for someone else to tell us how to do things. Okay, and so with proliferation of artificial intelligence and all these kind of automation tools, okay, we as humans are really only having one um, skill that is not easily programmable going forward, and that's our skill to create and come up with new things that computers can't easily work out because they don't have their own consciousness, and programmers don't have consciousness, uh, ability to code in consciousness into algorithms. So as humans, our biggest competitive advantage is ability to come up with new ways of building new tools and new products and solutions, without actually being told by someone else how to do that. We have these common design thinking methodologies that give us that ability to create those instance methods, and and then over and over create better cars, better transportation, better food, better infrastructure, better apps, and so on, software. So that's kind of like the overall introduction to design thinking and this group, and what our intentions are with community building. And thank you, Diana, for sharing and liking as well. So please post your comments, even if you're watching on the follow up. We want questions, critique. Critique is good because we can iterate on critique. Uh, um, what you need, what you're worried about, what you're hopeful about, what you see as good things that you might be using design thinking from all sorts of industries. Like in UK, for example, UK government, Gov UK is a great example of how government is being redesigned to work in modern ways. With Estonian government, you've got this kind of government as a service solution where Estonian government gives people from around the world ability to apply for e-residency, and then you can access Estonian government's services like tax returns, the residency card, which I still need to pick up from my Estonian embassy here in London, and all these kind of services the government provides. And there's no reason why you ever have to fill in a paper form, or why you even have to be doing this with the government where you're living. You can actually file your tax return in Estonia if that's what you want. And because of double taxation laws, you only pay tax in the country of European Union. UK still in the European Union. You can pay taxes in Estonia, and then you don't have to pay taxes in UK. But actually, when you look at it, Estonian taxes are a little bit higher than UK, so it's actually more preferable to file here. But if UK leaves, for example, European Union, you can use your Estonian e-residency as a European Union card still, so you don't have to pay that visa that they're thinking of charging for going down to France and so on. So that's how Estonia, as a small country, is using design thinking to create digital government that attracts more citizens who will be willing to set up businesses and pay more tax into Estonian establishment, government establishment. So government's also a business, so everything's business. So so that's kind of the end of this. Please post comments, questions, concerns, and we will incorporate that using our design thinking brains, right? We'll incorporate it into the next live stream in the ongoing series about design thinking and inspiration, discussions, panels, and so on. Thank you so much for listening, and share with your friends as well. Cheers, Dean. Cheers, Fraser. Thanks, Diana. Thanks everyone else who watches on the demand. Bye.